Welcome to this episode of the Women and Money Cafe. Right, it's a special occasion today because we are joined by Pete Matthew. Pete Matthew is the most prolific content creator that I can think of when it comes to personal finance. And he's an author, he's a podcaster, he's a YouTuber, and he's a financial planner. So you might know him better from the Meaningful Money podcast or his work at Jackson's as a financial planner. So if you're not familiar with Pete's work, you need to go and subscribe to his podcast now because it is superb. And along with Pete and myself today, we've got Michelle and Emily. What we're aiming to do in the next 30, 40 minutes is we want to share with you some really simple, quick wins that you can have with your money because Pete is a master at this. So we're very lucky to have him with us today. So Pete, thank you very much for joining us in the cafe today.
I'm blushing here, Julie. Thank you. That was very kind. It's an absolute joy to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right. So isn't it funny when other people sort of relay back what they think of us? It gets a bit uncomfortable.
Very. Yeah, very. But I am super grateful. People say nice things a lot. I've been doing this a long time and it still makes me blush. So but thank you. Very kind.
Right. Well, we might take this as a strategy. The next guest will be mean to them at the start to see
maybe
if it influences things. Okay. So Michelle and Emily, how are you guys today?
I'm good, thank you. I'm super good because it's my birthday. Sorry, not upstage.
Happy birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, Emily. Look what we got you as a gift. We got you Pete Matthew.
Thank you.
You got shortchanged.
That's it. It was lovely to be here.
Maybe, Pete, do you want to tell us a little bit about the work that you do before we start firing questions at you?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm a sort of textbook financial advisor and sort of follow the career path I've done 25 years now. So that classic career path was starting as a tied advisor with an insurance company in South Wales, where I lived at the time, and then made the leap to become an independent advisor. Moved to Cornwall. My wife is from Sennan, which is 1 mile from Land's End. So once my kids were born, the call home became a bit too strong for her to resist. And I resisted for a while, actually, but now I can't remember why, because I love it down here. And now we are in Penzance, which is 10 miles from Land's End, so it's not near anywhere. But I was fortunate to be able to come and work for a practice called Jackson's, which has been in Penzance for 100 years this year. So it started as a general insurance broker, not cars in 1923, probably, or not many of them. But, serving local farms and businesses and stuff with their insurance needs. And then they span out the financial advice practice in 1974. So even the bit that I now co-own is 50 years old next year. So it's a very well-established, very local company. And that was great, really enjoying it. But then I had an itch that I needed to scratch, which was really to try and help more people understand personal finance, which is just a life skill, right? It's like personal hygiene and being able to feed ourselves. We need to understand a world which, like it or not, it is built on economic principles, and there is a system that we can use to help ourselves. And more people need to know about it because we certainly don't teach it in school or colleges or in the workplace or anything, not enough anyway. So I started messing around with video cameras in 2010 and went down on the prom at 7:30 in the morning in Penzance when I thought nobody would be around because I thought, I felt like an idiot. Talked to this camera and told it what I was going to do, which was just to explain how money works. And 500 nearly videos later, and then nearly 500 podcast episodes as well. It's become a bit of a beast that I struggle to control sometimes. But I love it still because there's still an awful lot of people who need to hear about this stuff and understand it. So I'm having a blast. I get to help people still. I'm still an active financial planner. I am slowly getting rid of my clients to my other advisors here and handing them over in a way that works well for them, just to give me more time to do the YouTube channel and the podcast and to grow the business, which is becoming a bit of a beast as well. So yeah, very blessed, but I'm having a whale of a time.
All right. Well, thank you for giving us that background. I think one of the reasons I thought it would be really good to have you come on and so our listeners could hear you is because I think all of us have this kind of shared passion that we're trying to make money more accessible and make it simpler for people to get to grips with. Because there are certain elements of financial services where it's just shrouded in jargon and mystery and it becomes so inaccessible for people. And it really doesn't need to be that way. And I think your latest series on your podcast is all about simplifying things.
Yeah.
So how's that going?
It's going well. We're 8 out of 10 episodes in, and we're now almost sort of summarizing. So the next couple are summarizing simplifying retirement, and then simplifying legacy. And those are, sorry about the motorbike. going past my window. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but it's really loud here. So these last two episodes, really, all the work that's been done in the previous episodes, like tidying up pensions and investments and bank accounts and insurances and all that sort of stuff, is now bearing fruit, hopefully, because when it comes to sorting out how you leave things for those coming behind, when you're gone, or those who might have to help you if you lose capacity, having it simple is a godsend. It's like the last greatest gift you can give your family is a simple estate. So yeah, it's going really well. It's been fun, actually. So I do the podcast with my co-host, Rog, who's my best mate in the world. So we have a good laugh. I take the mick out of him mercilessly. And, it's good because I'm sure, as you've found out, talking about this stuff on a podcast helps you distill it in your own mind. It really helps refine what you think. And then obviously that helps me with clients and all the other areas of life as well. So yeah, it's going well. Thank you.
You've led us on nicely then to the first question. So what I thought is we would just get you on the podcast and grill you in the nicest possible way.
Yeah.
Because you've got so many years of experience. And I thought, let's go and steal all of Pete's best ideas and share them with the listeners.
For what it's worth, I'll do my best.
So if you take, for example, right, it's really not unusual for people to end up with multiple pensions, right? With very few of us stay in the one job for forever.
True.
We move around the employer. We end up accumulating all these pensions. Then the annual statements start to arrive with reams of pages and lots of numbers on them. And like, your average person, they're maybe going to read the first page and they're like, well, that made no sense. Let's just file it. Until they get to a certain age where they think, I really need to get to grips with this stuff. So what tips do you have for people that are nodding their heads right now as they listen to this to help them start to make sense of the paperwork and their pensions?
Yeah. Obviously, the fewer pension pots you have, the less paperwork you have, right? So one thing I think people should consider, and it does take a little bit of work, but it's not as difficult as you think, is not having multiple pension plans, okay? So you're dead right, Julie. As we go through life, many of us will have 7, 8, 10, 15 different jobs and we'll have a pension now because you have to. You'll have a pension in each one of those. And when you leave a job, it kind of stays there. It's your pot still, and you will still get statements as long as you tell them when you move house, right? But you should still get annual statements, and you just keep adding them, and eventually you're getting 9 annual statements every year. And I mean, that's going to be problematic for anybody because that level of complexity and hassle, any of us can think of a million better things to do on a Saturday morning than sitting down and sorting all that out. So by consolidating pensions, bringing them together, you reduce that burden. And so generally speaking, I say that ideally, obviously stay in the pension scheme that you're in currently. So whichever one is your current workplace pension, you need to stay in that. You need to contribute to it because your employer is contributing to it too. And they will probably not contribute to some other scheme that you set up. It just is too complicated for them to work out with PAYE, payroll, and all that. So stay in your current workplace scheme. But all your previous ones can be tidied up into one. Now, that can either be into your current workplace scheme, potentially, or what a lot of folks who listen to the podcast and watch the YouTube channel do is they have kind of their own personal pension alongside their workplace plan. And that becomes their tidy up pot. So whenever they move on to another job, the pension from the employment they've just left gets tidied up into their personal pot. Now, it's easier than ever to do. You don't actually need financial advice to do this. You do in some circumstances, but if that would apply to you, you'd probably know about it. But, you can open a pension on any of the online platforms these days in about 90 seconds flat. All you need is your name, your date of birth, your address, and your national insurance number. And then you need the details of all your old plans. But really, all you need is the provider. So, Legal & General, Aviva, Scottish Widows, the company that looks after the pension for you, and the policy number. Pretty much with that, you can bring your old pensions into one. Now, I have a checklist, which I can send you the link to, Julie, if you want, or I can send it to you so you can have it for folks to download. Because there are, in some cases, particularly with older pensions from like the late 80s or early 90s and before, sometimes there are reasons why you might not want to transfer those pensions, but that is pretty unusual, but the checklist helps you with that. So I just think it's worth tidying up, right? So you tidy up, you have fewer pensions, you have less paperwork. But even then, right, even if you've got a simple system with only 1 or 2 plans in it, you're still going to get a whole load of paperwork. So I have one real golden rule when it comes to financial paperwork, that when it comes, you take it out of the envelope and you throw the envelope away. Don't keep financial paperwork in an envelope. It adds an unbelievable amount of inertia to the process. You have to get it out. You have to look in the envelope, right? Even if you write on the front what the envelope contains, still you have to open it to do anything with it. So just get rid of the envelope. You also don't need to keep any more really than the last year's statement. So many people have massive tons of paperwork, but there's stuff in there from 2010 and you just don't need it, probably. You just need the most recent one, because these days the companies have got the records. If you really needed to find anything out, you could ring them. And so for the most part, don't make your life more difficult than it is. When the new statement comes in, chuck the last one away. And it just reduces the bulk. My entire financial paperwork filing system is about 1/3 of a filing cabinet drawer, because I just don't keep anything that I don't need. I understand people get a bit worried. They think, what if I throw something away and I need that in future? Well, you probably won't. So just tidy up, keep it simple, and just don't have tons of accounts. That's half the battle, really. That makes sense?
It does. I know that what I'm meant to take away from that is consolidate your pension. But what I'm really taking away is getting rid of the envelopes.
Tell you what, gold. It is gold.
Can I just ask, what about online provision? So if you could go online and go totally digital, that's even better for the environment, isn't it?
100%. And that's more possible now than it's ever been. I've turned off statements for almost everything. There are some financial kinds of accounts where they have to provide you a paper statement. I think credit cards particularly, I think they have to do that wherever interest being paid, and it's kind of part of a credit agreement. But for the most part, you can go fully paperless, and that's got to be the future. Just make sure you remember your passwords and don't use the same passwords for everything.
Definitely the tricky part. Yeah.
What are your thoughts so far, Michelle?
Oh, it's very similar to what we hear day to day. People come in with all the statements and sort of piles of them. I know I've had a recent client who I went through the exercise of 10 pensions, and he had kept everything, bless him. And he actually said, I'm going to ceremony burn everything once all this is done. Because he was quite excited. But yeah, as you say, I also really took away the envelope, because I know how much that adds to that pile of paperwork that you look at when all the envelopes are included.
I wasn't familiar with the envelope trick. I had got it down to the last statement, but I hadn't just get rid of the envelope. That's blown my mind, that. So all my clients will get envelopes thrown away next time I see them. You've been warned if you're listening.
And I just discovered the scanning button on my printer. That's very handy.
Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah.
Scan it in, get rid of it all.
Even scanner apps on your phone these days are so good. Take a photograph of the front page, or even all the pages, combine it into a PDF and keep it in, on your phone or in a Dropbox or something, and you never need to keep the paper.
That's what I do. As soon as it comes in, it gets scanned on my phone and then thrown in my bin. And I know that freaks Brian, the husband, out. So, but don't watch.
Yeah, that's right. I once went into the house of a solicitor, right? Actually, it was his wife that called me in. And when I got there, he wasn't there. And that kind of should have raised some alarm bells, really. And she was like, I'm just going to go. Can you just tell me what I can throw away here? And he had mobile phone bills going back 20 years. I said, there is no need. And he was just like this. And we filled like 2 bin bags. But he got home and just said, it's going in the loft. I cannot throw it away, because he's a lawyer, right? He's like, okay, one day
you've seen their offices.
Yeah, exactly. I might have to sue somebody over this, sort of call that I made at 9:00 in the morning one Tuesday, and so I need to keep the records. No, you don't, but whatever.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because we've all got little quirks and little habits that we've got, and some of them are good for us and some less so. And I'm just wondering, you've been doing this for 25 years. And what I'm curious about is, what's the most common way, Pete, that you see people accidentally overly complicate their finances?
I think complication happens by default. Most people don't do it on purpose, as you say. You use the word accidentally there. It happens by default. So, simply by moving jobs and not doing anything about the pensions, by moving money from one account to another to get a better interest rate, by keeping paperwork for a life insurance policy that expired 5 years ago. It happens by default. In fact, most bad things happen by default. So if you are sort of apathetic about your finances, then it's going to get away from you. I read a book by a guy called Michael Hyatt once. This motorbike keeps going past.
I just think there must be loads of bikers down in
I know.
Penzance.
Well,
Is it a
maybe it's
hotbed for bikers?
Not that I'm aware of, but this guy seems to be determined to make my life a misery this afternoon. So I read a book by Michael Hyatt, and he told a story about how he and his wife went on a trip, and they did a snorkeling lesson. And then the next day, they got up all excited to go into the beautiful bay and the reef there and do some snorkeling. And so they were doing that and having a lovely time. And they came up out of the water and realized that they'd been caught in a rip, and they were a very long way out to sea with no flotation devices or anything, because they were all just snorkeling off the beach. And so, I mean, they tried not to freak out, and they did everything right, went across the beach and in and got there, but were absolutely exhausted. And he calls that the drift. When you take your eyes off the ball, you're far more likely to drift. And so I continually use the word intentional when it comes to sorting out any area of our lives, but particularly personal finance. So in order for things not to happen by default, they've got to happen by design. And unfortunately, there is no shortcut to actually sitting down and saying, I am going to do this today. I'm going to sit down, empty all my envelopes out of that second drawer down on my desk, and I'm going to start going through them now. I'm going to sort my financial life out. I think things feel worse and more complex when we don't engage with them. So it becomes a little bit self-fulfilling. We got this sort of nagging feeling that this is horrendous mess of financial paperwork in that drawer, and I'm never going to be able to deal with it, and so I don't. Whereas sometimes you just got to take a breath and say, right, I'm going to begin to deal with it, even if it takes me several sessions. And that's where, I mean, I've done that for clients. I'm sure you have as well. And what I try to do is help people who listen and give them very clear steps. Keep this, throw that away, and just help them to deal with it as quick as possible. It's worse if we don't deal with it. So being intentional is, I think, the secret sauce with anything. Nothing good happens by default. Nobody fell out of bed and landed on the Olympic podium, right? It takes years of work. And so it's ridiculous to expect that everything will be okay if we don't engage with it. So the key way that people get into a financial mess is by default, by accident.
Right. That you're talking about the envelopes there. I think this is a good time to introduce your tip, Michelle, isn't it, from our Atomic Habits episode? Was it Atomic Habits?
It was the Atomic Habits, but I'm trying to think what it was now.
You can't remember your own tip. I remember your tip about the envelopes. If you've got a pile of envelopes there and it's just too much.
In one a day.
Yeah.
Open one a day, get rid of one a day, and you'll just see that pile go down gradually. And actually, I was listening to one of your most recent one, I think, which was simplifying your behavior. And I think one of the ones that came across was sort of our behavior that we had was sort of boredom, not wanting to do things. And again, that sort of feeds into, you have to overcome that and be intentional.
Yeah, definitely. No shortcut, unfortunately.
No.
But if you can make it bite-sized chunks, like you say, that's a very powerful tool. I need to spend 8 hours doing this, and nobody's going to do that. But if it's like, I'm going to just set a clock and do 15 minutes worth, or just do one envelope, then that's manageable and more likely to engage with it then, definitely. Good shout, Michelle.
I was just going to say intentionality is one of our favorite words here in the Women and Money podcast. It's just too many people sleeping through life, aren't they?
First, we thought we'd invented the word. We thought we just made it up. And then I had to go and get a dictionary and check. It's a real word, intentionality.
It is? Yeah.
All right. I think that's really good. I think, one of the things that I come across a lot as well is, like you were saying, Pete, where people have opened up different bank accounts to try and get different interest rates. And then the existing interest rate has dropped and that bank account's no good anymore. Let's move over here, but this one gets left open. So you've then got maybe 6 or 7 bank accounts, saving accounts with the bank, and trying to figure out the paperwork for each one. So I guess it's maybe then just as you've moved on to the next good rate, shut the previous one down.
For sure.
It just reduces the paperwork, and when you're logging into your internet banking, you're not scrolling down to try and find the account that actually matters to you.
Good example. Yeah, absolutely right. You do that with all sorts of things, from bank accounts to old life insurance plans, or other accounts, anything. Can you can move on Like if you change your car and you registered with the old provider and the old manufacturer or the garage you bought the old car from, you still get stuff trying to flog you a new model. It's just take yourself off the mailing list. Unsubscribe.
Do you know what I did the other week as well? And if it's happened to me, it's going to happen to quite a few people. I can't remember what prompted me to do it, but I started making a list of all my life cover plans and all my critical illness plans. So I just got a 1 page and started writing down who's it with, how much is it for, and when does it finish? Because I kind of lost track of them, because some of them I took out when I was quite young. Some of them I took out 5 years ago. I can't remember what's finishing when and if I've actually got enough cover. So just having that 1 pager, writing it down and okay, I don't need to keep that lot of paperwork anymore because that's expired. So that can go.
Nice.
And just feeling like I was on top of it. Because I kind of knew I've got quite a lot of life cover. But how much have I really got?
True.
So and then we've used the word intention then. And that kind of brings me on nicely to one of the other questions that I had for yourself, Pete. And that was, we often have good intentions when it comes to organizing our money and planning for the future. But actually, the thought of starting can seem quite daunting, or you just don't know where to start. And it's like putting the intentions into action. So have you got any tips for how you can simplify your thinking when it comes to money?
Yeah. One thing you could do, which we kind of alluded to already, is if you think there's a whole lot of particularly paperwork to sort out, you could kind of declare paperwork bankruptcy. I'm not suggesting you shred everything you've got, but rather than sort what you've got, you could put it in a bin bag in the loft. So you know it's all together. I mean, it's a whole mess of garbage, right? And you don't know. It will take you quite a lot of time to sort through if you needed anything. But given that you probably won't, you could just I'm just going to put all that up in the loft, out of sight, out of mind, and start from now. So everything that comes through the door from now, I will deal with accordingly. So new statement comes through from a pension or from an investment or whatever, I will create a file for that and keep that. And then when the next one comes, I'll get rid of the old one. I start from now, right? I think, I don't know about you, but I'm all for rewarding myself when I do something good. So probably a bit too much so, right? But so I think that can be quite helpful. You know, if I decide I'm going to deal with this, then I will reward myself in some fashion. Probably not, if I stick to my budget for a month, then I will have a splurge on the high street. That might be counterproductive, but some kind of reward. I think so much of our thinking when it comes to money is modeled because we, unless you're in this industry or if you happen to have a parent or some other influence figure who taught you this stuff, you can't possibly understand it or know it. You have to really make a point of learning it. And obviously lots of people do. Your podcast, mine, all these resources are available now. But unless you're taught, you can't possibly sort of know it. And that not knowing is the worst thing, actually. This sort of general feeling that there's something that I'm not getting to, it carries quite a lot of psychic weight, I think, and can be really quite oppressive. And the longer, it's like if you have a bit of a nagging pain or something.
I've got the feeling right now as you talk about it.
Right, you just think it'll go away. Yeah, it'll go away. Perhaps it'll go away. And then it's 3 or 4 weeks and it hasn't gone away and it's getting a little bit worse. And it's always there nagging. And eventually you just think, I've just got to go to the doctor and sort it out. And you do. And it turns out it's something that's easily fixable, hopefully, and job done. And you think, why did I leave it so long to go to the doctor? And it is much the same. I think it's such a life skill, this stuff. It actually isn't that complicated. Certainly not for most people. Right? For most people, they need to do a few things consistently well. They need to spend less than they earn. They need to avoid bad debt. They need to obviously insure for disaster, make sure that they, have some life insurance in case the rug is completely pulled out from under them and their family. And then once that's all sorted, they pay down their mortgage and they invest for the future. Really, that's it. There's nothing much more to that. And even obviously there's detail underneath it, but not a lot. When it comes to investing for the future, most ordinary people earning an ordinary living just need pensions and ISAs. That's all they need. They don't need the whole wealth of complexity of the personal finance system. And so don't think you have to understand it all. You just need to understand the stuff that applies to you. And that is spend less than you earn, insure against disaster, and invest for the future so that you've got money that you can spend in the future, not just now. And so my sort of life's calling is to try and simplify this stuff as much as possible into these things that anybody can grasp quickly and easily. And then they go, oh, okay, perhaps it's not as complicated as I thought it was. And so I'll give it a go. And I hear from people all the time, which is just joy of what I do, is that I get continual emails from people saying, you know, I just didn't address the 25 grand of credit card get debt because I just didn't know where to start. But now it's gone. I have an emergency fund and I've just opened a pension. And I just go, come on, that's ace. Because it's only by helping people understand this stuff that they can engage with it. So it's not a tip. It's a sort of almost an encouragement that it's not as complicated as you think. And actually, if you can hold down a job, you can understand the personal finance system enough for you to take control of your money.
I think that's perfect. You've reduced all of the jargon, all of the industry down to 4 steps.
Yep.
Spend less than you've got coming in.
Yep.
Get rid of the bad debt as soon as you can. Insure against disaster and start saving for the future.
It's all most of us have to do up until retirement, right? Gets a little bit complicated then, which is why we have a job. Certainly most people who come to me are at that sort of retirement point. But for the 30, 40 years you're working up to that, you don't even have to think about that. Get there when you get there. For now, just do those 4 things consistently.
Right.
Every year.
Emily, when clients are coming to you and maybe the thought of getting the money in order just seems a bit overwhelming for them, what have you found works really well with your clients?
That's a really good question. It's actually what I was just about to say, is that I think Pete has a great talent of making it very simple. And I think it is, if you're in the right frame of mind. And I think the problem is that most of the people who really need the help are the ones that are really finding it difficult to get into the right frame of mind. So,
Yes.
I mean, when a client comes to me and is a little bit sort of anxious about things, the first thing I need to do is find out why they feel anxious and try and find the right words to make them feel less anxious. And that might mean that I don't talk to them very much about finance in the first meeting. It might just mean that we sort of get to know each other. But yeah, it's a tricky one. And I think, as we all agree here, a lot of things that stop us from taking practical steps are the emotional ones, this baggage that we haven't dealt with. So yeah, anyway, we can open it up to something completely different now, or you can stick to your script.
No, that was a really good tip.
Really
you know
good.
what? It makes me remember, I think we're going back to 19 something or other, when I was a post student and I walked into my branch of Lloyd's Bank and the branch manager had a chat with me and she set me up with 2 bank accounts. So I had one for my bills and one that I was allowed to live off.
Amazing.
And that just made me feel so like, oh, I know I can do this. So I put that over there, then all my essentials are covered and I'm allowed to do what I want with this bit. And if I spend it all in week 1, then that's my problem and I'll deal with it. But I just thought, well, that's easy. I can handle that.
Amazing.
So, but I like what you were saying there, Emily. What about yourself, Michelle?
Yeah, I think with clients, it's very much, it's overcoming the fear factor, because we have a fear of the unknown. If you don't know, you're scared of it because you don't know what it means. But with clients, it's very much assessing where we think they are and just breaking it down and being gentle. Let's do this bit before we move to the next stage, and don't panic because I'm going to explain it to you, or you can access information, but I'll tell you where to go to get the good information. And it is just overcoming that fear factor. I've had family members who don't want to open statements, don't want to look at their bank accounts because they're just afraid of seeing what it says. But actually, when they've opened it, they've gone, oh, actually, it's okay. Okay. But yeah, it's just it's habit, isn't it? It's a stage. Take each bit at a time.
I think what I would add on to that as well, that's really interesting, because as you're saying that, what that's making me think of is, if you are feeling anxious about opening the envelopes, then that's got you in a heightened state of arousal. You've got all kinds of chemicals going on in your brain, which means that once you've got the paperwork out of the envelope, it has now become harder to digest the information that was in the envelope. So I would suggest it's like, even if you're thinking, right, I'm going to try and tackle my money, is make sure that you do sort of mental prep to make sure that you're in the right place to do it. So, it's that old saying that you don't go food shopping when you're hungry, do you? So make sure that you're in the right state of mind. And has anybody got the Headspace app?
Yeah.
So there's a money meditation on there.
Is there? I've not seen that.
Oh, yeah. I listened to it. Oh, it's a while ago now. But for anybody who's like, okay, I'm listening to you guys and I'm thinking, okay, maybe I can tackle my money. Okay, where shall I start? But you know what? You could maybe go and start after you finish the podcast, right? Don't be pausing the podcast. But go and get yourself a little 10-minute blast on Headspace with the money meditation and let us know how you get on with that.
Great idea.
All right. So I think there's some good tips there. One of the ones I wanted to ask you about, Pete, and I think we'll all have a stab at this one, right? And it's for years, okay, we've all been doing this for years, where you meet a client, you sit down and you're going through what we call a fact finding. We have to establish what you've got coming in and what's going back out again, and trying to get people to pin down exactly what their outgoings are can be one of the most challenging aspects, oddly enough, of being a financial advisor. Certainly for me, I really think one of the cornerstones of building that financial resilience is spending less than is coming in. But it's that figuring out, what do I actually spend my money on? Because everybody knows what the direct debits are, right? But it's then all the other stuff. But I know my bills are X per month. Yeah, but you earn Y. And we've got to get out. Where's that money going? So what tips have we got collectively to help people get to grips with really being able to track their spending?
Well, you nicked mine. Well, you didn't. It's yours. Bother mine. That 2-account system was a revelation to me when somebody suggested it to me. I was terrible with it as a student. And to be honest, up to getting married, my wife sorted me out financially. Right, this was before I became a financial advisor, I hasten to add. So, I'd kind of sorted my life out before I started helping other people with it. But she was brilliant with money. Left university with a sort of bank balancing credit and a new TV that she bought. And she actually bought a car for cash when she left university. Just, it was a lot cheaper then. And we didn't have, tuition fees and all that sort of stuff. But, she taught me everything I needed to know. But that 2-account thing was an absolute revelation to me. One thing I would say is that really the only way to know what's going out is to track what's going out. You have to keep an eye on it, but make life as easy as possible for yourself and have as few categories possible. So I don't think you need to separate groceries from toiletries, from maybe stuff for the dog or cat, Julie, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? I just think that's just a general groceries budget. I think if you try and be too granular, it becomes a problem. If something takes longer to track than to do, you're never going to do it. So just have as few categories as possible. I think I have about half a dozen that I track. I don't track them religiously now, but because that's all. Because if you have the 2-account system, your bills account, your energy costs don't change that much month to month. Your house insurance, your mortgage rent payment or whatever, they don't change much month to month. You don't need to budget those because you know what they're going to be every month. It's the stuff that's variable, isn't it? And so you just get it down to half a dozen, 6, 7 or 8 categories and track those. But I don't think there's any way to get around it other than actually tracking it. But fortunately, modern banking apps make that quite easy, don't they?
They do. Michelle, what tips have you got for people to help them just begin to feel like they're a little bit more in control of what they're spending or aware?
I think this is something I did with actually my husband, who has a deep fear of money. Regardless of what I do, he has this thing that he just doesn't want to deal with it and feels he's out of control with it. But actually, we went through the exercise where we did the tracking of what he had spent. But now it's very much when he is paid, he'll sit and work out, well, that's what's going to the bills account. This is what I've got left. This is my fuel. And then at the end of the month, before he does that, he'll go back and look at, did he spend how he thought he was going to the month before? And if it did go a bit wayward, has at times you go on holiday or whatever, he knows where it's from, and he'll actually sort of sit there and say to me, it's okay because I can see where it happened. If he does it and can't see it, he then gets into a panic and you can see the anxiety because he's like, where's it go? Where's it gone? So it's very much forward-looking, but also retrospective. I think if you plan ahead and then look back at what you've done, you've got that sense of control in your head and you go, it's okay because I know it's fine. I know what happened.
It's a bit like we've taken out the envelope, haven't we? Well, it's in the envelope. It's a scary thing. Yeah. What about yourself, Emily?
Yeah, I was thinking, it's very, very similar to being on a diet, isn't it? Because, there's all these people putting on weight and going, I don't understand why I'm putting on weight. I don't. And then you're told to write it all down, aren't you? Calorie count or whatever. And then, like Michelle said, you look back at what you've eaten and think, oh, yeah.
That's a great metaphor. I love that.
It'll be that Krispy Kreme donut, won't it?
It probably
yeah.
is. Yeah.
But I think actually in the very same way that we put that very unrealistic picture of the skinny model in the bikini on the fridge, I think that's what we need to do with our money a little bit is, okay, don't pick the unrealistic image, but pick something that is realistic, that is going to get you thinking longer term. You know, if you're wanting to get control of your money because you've got a dream about buying a nice bigger house in the country, then why not stick a little picture of a nice house in the country somewhere, not on the fridge, but, you know, stick it on your credit card or something. So when it comes out your wallet, you go, oh no, I can't do that because I want to buy that house. But yeah, I think visualizing the longer term is going to help you feel a bit more motivated with those boring tasks of actually keeping notes of what you're spending and being very, very clear about why you're doing it.
I love that, only adding the visual element to it. I've got a confession to make. You know how I'm like the queen of apps? And you've got all these apps that can help you track your spending. So Lumio's one, Money Dashboard, there's You Need a Budget, there's all these different apps. I've tried them all, right? And I've never really sort of bought into any single one. But the thing, I'm stealing your ideas here again, Pete, I'm really sorry. Right? The only thing that's actually I've been properly budgeting for the last 3 months, and it's Pete's spreadsheet.
Is it? By the way, if you steal from me, you steal twice because there's nothing original that I talk about, right? So,
so I've been using your spreadsheet, and what I like about it is because all of these apps and everything is you set the budget, and then okay, that's how much you spend on food each month, and that's how much you spend on this each month. With yours, I sit down at the start of the month, and I map out because some months you've got weird stuff going on, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like this month, the boiler was getting serviced. And that wouldn't normally be in the regular budget. But because I'm sitting at the start of the month allocating my money, as I'm putting the entry in the spreadsheet, I'm like, okay, I need a boiler entry this month. And I needed the vet this month as well. So I'm doing an individual budget for each month. It only needs tweaking a little bit. But that's working out really well for me. And I've never budgeted before in my life.
Good. I'm glad it's helping.
Tell us where we can get your spreadsheet from, Pete. I'd love to have a look at that.
I'll have to send you the link. It'll be on the website somewhere. I can't
so
see it on top of my head.
Is it meaningfulmoney.tv?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Meaningfulmoney.tv is the website. I'll find a link and get it to you. Make it
in the show note.
Yeah.
No, I'll put a link in the show notes. So I like your spreadsheet.
Thank you.
More than the apps, and I'm the queen of apps.
Perhaps I should turn it into an app. That's what I need to do.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. Okay, so as we start to wrap things up, there was another question I wanted to put to you. And that is like, over the years that you've been advising and talking to people about money, I know for a fact there will be little things that you've done. There will be favorite, simple, quick wins that your clients have absolutely fallen in love with. I've put you on the spot here. I'm just wondering what springs to mind about the little things that you've shared with people, and they're like, wow. A bit like the bank manager helped us with the 2 accounts.
Yeah. The things that really resonate people are the behavioral stuff, right? Nobody gets excited about ISAs versus pensions or anything like that. At least nobody you want to have dinner with gets excited about that sort of stuff. So, but having little personal rules that you stick to when it comes to dealing with this stuff, and it can be daft things like before you sit down perhaps to do your budget, don't have a glass of wine. Or, because if that clouds your judgment, I mean, it might not, but, sometimes these little personal rules, or before any financial decision, like whether I'm going to add more money to my pension or take money out of my ISA to spend on, getting the garden done or whatever, just wait 24 hours before making a decision. The one easily that comes up most that seems to resonate is don't watch the news, particularly when it comes to, because we never get any calls when it seems like the markets are going to the hell in a handcart, or hardly any, because we just tell people, look, you're investing for 40 years probably, so it doesn't matter what happens tomorrow. So please don't worry about it. Of course, the media thrives on negativity and hyperbole and making things really worse than they are. And by sort of cutting that stuff out of your life, it's really good for the soul. And it just means you can think more clearly about things, I think. And that's not to say we need to be uninformed and ignorant. That's obviously you need to know what's going on in the world. But most media these days is shockingly biased or over-eggs everything. It's part of why I quite like the Financial Times. I mean, most of it's way over my head, so let alone anybody ordinary. But I quite like the fact that it says, this horrendous thing is going on in the world, and this is what it means for you, your pensions. It's like, okay, let's not get you sort of tied up in the sort of emotion of it. This is what it means for our money, folks. And that sounds dreadfully mercenary, and I'm the first to weep when something awful happens in the world or whatever. But I think when it comes to making financial decisions, we need not to do that in the context of overhyped news. You never, ever hear of billions being wiped on to the stock market, but always when it's going off and things are terrible and red lines crashing through the floor. And it's just, you just don't need to hear that stuff. It's not good for the soul. And the other thing that I find people really releases them is, bear in mind what we do for a living, the sort of stuff I preach, like, you need to save for the future and all that sort of stuff. The thing that really releases people when I say is that if you have to choose between now and one day, choose now every time, because you only live once. The future is not guaranteed. So for God's sake, focus on today, but don't neglect tomorrow. It's very rare, actually, that you have to choose one or the other, that some decision you make is binary. Usually you say, right, I've got 100 quid extra this month, left over or whatever. It's unlikely, I know, but it's like, you don't have to say, I'm going to put it all in my pension for 20 years hence, or I'm going to enjoy it all. You could split it. And so I think people need reassurance and frameworks to think about this stuff. And so sometimes, it just freeing people up to say, I can enjoy that now and get the most out of it. Have a great meal, have a lovely day out with my family, and the pension will be all right. So focus on the now over the future, but don't neglect the future. It's a fine line sometimes. So just don't watch the news.
I think that's really powerful. I like Carl Richards' description of it. Financial porn, he calls it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
so
doesn't do anybody any good.
No, we don't engage with that. Michelle, is there one thing that you said or done for a client that's just made them go, wow, that we can share with the listeners so that they can benefit too?
I think it probably sort of relates back to what Pete was saying, really. But it is about now and the future. You don't have to pick between one or the other. You often get clients who want to deprive themselves now because they feel they're doing the right thing for the future. And then I've had cases where something has gone wrong and they've regretted that decision. So I would say speaking to clients and saying, yeah, we're going to build a plan, but this plan will be out of date once I've written this plan. It is actually a completely moving feast is what they say, isn't it? It is adaptable. The idea is we have this relationship and people should look at their money and think it's a relationship with that money. It's about living the life you want, but also planning for the things you'd like to do in the future. And I think when you explain that to people, like you say, it isn't a now and then. It is actually, I can enjoy a bit of it and I can live my life now. Or even in people sort of looking at retirement and going, wow, in retirement, I won't have any money, so I won't be able to do anything. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, it doesn't have to be that way. You could put some away and you've got some going towards that retirement. So yeah, I think for me, it's the explanation and taking the emotion and all the external forces out of the way and saying, what life do you want? Okay, think about that.
Yeah. The worst case for that is when people, particularly in retirement, they don't spend enough earlier on because they're worried about long-term care. Yeah. And then, the odds are that they won't need it and they leave too much money on the table and they haven't fully lived early on while they've got the strength and health and the bulk of their money in place to be able to do it. I just think that's a real tragedy. And, they want to make sure the kids are all right. I forget the kids, for goodness sake. This is your money. You worked for it. I realized I'm a parent myself. I understand the parental sort of drive to help your kids, but not at your own expense. And your kids probably wouldn't want that anyway.
No.
So, yeah.
Right. What about yourself, Emily?
Yeah, I'll go technical a little bit on this rather than behavioral, because I think one of the things that I really want clients to understand is that a pension in itself or an ISA in itself doesn't explain to you what you're invested in. So the number of times I've had somebody come in and say, oh yeah, my mate down the pub said not to invest in pensions because I hear they've been doing really badly. Or yeah, ISAs are not doing very well. I'm not investing in ISAs. These things are tax wrappers. It's what they're invested in that actually matters. And so getting people to understand that, and also to help them understand that they can also have a choice as well in what they're invested in, so such that they can align it with their own values and things. That, I think that's really empowering to people. That's what I'd want clients to understand.
I think that's one of the most valuable things that you do, Emily, is just help people sort of make sure the money's aligned with what's important to them. So
Yeah.
great. Mine's a little bit more practical than that. I feel like really basic now.
Yeah, but my clients all get dead excited. And like when
you've got half a dozen bank accounts and they've all got different purposes, is we go and log into the internet banking, we go and change the name of all the accounts. So that we've got savings for Johnny's school fees. We've got the bank account that's for the house renovation. We've got the car account, and giving all the accounts names. Because up until then, it's just random pots of money. But it's tying it back in with being intentional again. What is the money there for? What's the purpose of it? So for lots of reasons. So when it comes time to spend it, it's a lot easier to spend, because if there's an account that says car on it and you want to buy a car, then there's not a lot of friction there, is there? And if there's one where you have to keep saving into it on a regular basis and the name of it's there, you're reminded why I'm saving this money, because that thing is important to me. So, and I do that with my own money, and I like logging in and seeing all my little pots, all the different names on.
I love that. I've got a handbag now that was purchased in that way, and I love that handbag.
Has the handbag fund been replaced with something else?
Not since the market's dropped, but that's another story.
Very expensive taste in handbags. Oh, right. Well, as I say, we're just going to wrap it up there. Now, look, Emily, Michelle, thank you very much for your contributions. Pete, you were everything I hoped you would be.
You're way too kind. Thank you.
Emily, you can do what you like now with your birthday present. I'm not sure how Mrs. Matthew's going to feel about that. You might want to check in. But it just remains me to say thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. And thank you to you for listening. Now, just a quick request from me. We have a series lined up, planned on pensions. After many requests, could we start talking about how to get started in pensions? We're going to do a series of episodes on that. So if you've got any questions, start sending us your questions now. We will make sure that we take care of them in each episode. So you can send a voice note or just a regular old-fashioned email to the womenandmoneycafe@gmail.com, and we will take care of everything for you. So by the time you've listened to these series, you'll be able to go off and make that pension happen for you. Right? But until next time, take care of yourselves.